Hi my dear friends, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be painting this beautiful winter wonderland scene, and I'm so excited for this one because although it looks a difficult one, but trust me, it's not. It is super easy, and I'll show you step by step how I painted this. So watch the video from start to end guys, so that you don't miss any step, and let's start painting. Alright, so to start with, first let's choose a pad of paper here, and this one is from a brand called Lana, and I really like this one because it's 100% cotton, it's also cold press, and it's 300 GSM, and I use this brand of paper quite often for my paintings. So what I'm doing here first is kind of dividing the page into two halves, somewhat like a 90-10 ratio, and the lower portion is going to be my ground and the upper portion is going to be the sky area. And I also remembered that I want a nice clean edge, so I'm kind of taping the paper there, and started off by sketching the first two trees on the foreground. And for sketching the tree, I like to use a technique called the forking technique. It's something like I just named it, and basically I just sketch one branch, and then I just divide the same into two more branches, so that way it gives me a really nice natural look of the tree. And I always like to sketch trees in that way. Here I'm also sketching the house, and of course you can choose the shape, the angle, and the size of the house, whatever you however you want it. Here I'm just painting sketching it straight in front with two windows, and just nothing too serious, just a basic shape of a house. I'm also going to be adding some trees towards the backgrounds, and these trees are at a distance, so I'm sketching them smaller compared to the other two trees, just to kind of fill up the empty space, and also adding a small maybe extension of the house slightly towards the right. It's completely up to you and however you want the house to look like. Next I'm going to be using the colors, pretty much neutral for this painting. I have ultramarine blue and sky blue. I have some Vandyke brown, some perylene green, and also some white gouache, and this is Paynes gray. And yeah, mostly these are the colors that I'll be using. I'll also use a big flat brush for creating the sky washes, and number 1 and number 6. And firstly I'm going to mix ultramarine blue with a little bit of sky blue, and this is the mixture that I'm going to be using for the sky. And I've also added a lot of water to it to make it very diluted. And before starting to paint the sky, I just use my spray bottle to kind of slightly damp the page a little bit, so that the color kind of glides in really nicely and doesn't leave any harsh edges. So basically I'm working wet on wet here with the sky. Using a nice flat brush is really good for this step, because it will really give you a nice wash, very seamless, so it'll look very blended and beautiful. The next step is I'm mixing a little bit of Paynes gray to the previous blue, and kind of want to create a little bit of contrast towards the upper portion of the sky. And so I'm using just maybe a few washes of the same color to kind of bring a little bit of depth to the sky. The next step is I'm going to start painting the house. So while the sky is drying, so I just thought I'll add in the details to the houses, and for that I am using a very saturated form of burnt sienna and Paynes gray mixture, and started with my number 1 brush. I'm just leaving out the windows and kind of just blending the saturated paint out, rinsing my brush, and using just plain water to kind of blend that color out throughout the shape of the house. Next, I'm going to start painting the trees, and for that I'm going to mix a little bit of Paynes grey to the burnt sienna mixture, and started off by just kind of drawing thinner lines for the trees. Now for this step, I actually made a mistake and I used the number 6 brush, but I wasn't very happy with the result. The branches kind of came out quite thick, and so you can of course go ahead and use a more smaller brush. I think that'll give you better results. Maybe a number 3 or 1 would also work fine. And just kind of added a little bit more of extended the house slightly towards the left, also with the little darker area. This part is actually didn't plan a lot. I kind of just went with the flow and just thought I'll add some bushes or some shrubs there to kind of blend into the background. Next up is I'm using a little bit of perylene green, because why not? I just thought the green might bring out the bushes a little bit more. So I'm just dropping the color there actually, and letting, because it's still damp, so the water itself is kind of blending the color out, and the color is kind of nicely bleeding into the background, and it's creating a nice effect. Next step is I'm mixing a little bit of Vandyke brown with the Paynes grey, and with this shade I just thought I'll add in a little bit of contrast to the branches to kind of bring them out. Otherwise they were looking quite flat, so towards the bottom of the tree I just went ahead and added a little bit of depth. Next up is now it's time to add some shadow to the window of the house and bring in some details there. So with Paynes grey, I'm just kind of creating some shadow where I feel it would naturally hit. And for shadows, I always like to use a cooler value. So here I'm using Paynes grey for the same. Next up is I wanted to bring out the snow covered roof, and for that I just thought I'll mix a very diluted blue and kind of fill up some spaces where it was almost white, like in between the tree branches and around the roof. Also I noticed that because I'm using cotton paper, which is why I could do this. If you're not using cotton paper, then your paint might leave harsh lines, so you have to be careful before doing this step. Next, let's move on to the other side of the painting, and for the same I'm going to first start painting the tree, and for that again I have a mixture of Van Dyke brown and Paynes grey, and but I have used very little Paynes grey here. Mostly it's Van Dyke brown, and probably also mixed a little bit of perylene green. You know me, I just kind of go with the flow sometime. And again, starting out by thinning out using the forking technique with one branch, and then dividing the same to two branches. And here I'm using a smaller brush, thankfully, because I wasn't happy with the number 6, so I'm here using a number 1 to create the same. I actually liked painting the trees a lot, and I really enjoyed, and it was very satisfying to kind of paint the branches, especially with the number 1 brush. Same thing again on the other side. I'm again going to paint some bushes or some shrubs towards the right hand side of the house, similarly to what I did on the left, and this will enable me to kind of complete the composition and also look very cohesive. Next up, it's time to add the shadows and the depths, and for that again I'm using Paynes grey, and adding depth towards the bottom branches to kind of bring out the tree. And of course this will gives a really beautiful three-dimensional look and kind of gives a very finished look to the painting. Here I love to add some shadows to the trees also, and for that again I'm mixing Paynes grey and a little bit of that previous blue mixture. I wanted to add some shadows, like as if the morning sun is kind of casting long shadows on the ground, and I really wanted to kind of do that because the ground is so white and pristine, and that kind of broke down the whole monotony. Next comes the fun part of adding snow, and for that I'm using white gouache, and I'm kind of just splattering the gouache over the top portion, especially where it's darker area, like starting from the sky, and just dabbing my tissue paper here to kind of make a few splatters a little lighter. And you can do this however you want to, it's completely up to you, whatever your taste is and however you like the snow to fall. Final detail touches I'm adding to the window frame, and this I'm doing with Paynes grey. You can use whichever darker shade you have on your palette left over, and just more shadows and depth here and there, and I guess that's the final painting. The amount of detail is always up to you, how much you want to put. If you want to keep it very loose and you don't want to go with a lot of details, it's absolutely fine. After all, it's your creation and you're completely free to do what you like. And there it is, guys, and that's the final painting. I hope you like it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Share it with your friends and family, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.